Hello everyone, my name is Alicia Jackson, licensed professional counselor, and welcome to my channel. Today we are reviewing Married at First Sight, Season 17, Episode 9. Here at this channel we do a different type of therapeutic review where we get a little curious about what's happening internally for these couples, what's motivating there's these behaviors, making them show up in the way that they are, and we utilize the model internal family systems to do that. Now, if you are returning, welcome back. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get started. First we have Lauren and Orion. Now there is a part of me that's like, oh, let's just not videotape them anymore. But we know MAFS is not going to do that. They're going to continue this to, happen, right? We're going to continue to see this. There's a part of me that just wants to spare Lauren from any more, right? Any more of this public, right? Display of really this heartbreak that's happened for her, and really hoping too to give Orion some time to just kind of be with himself and think about really what happened, what was happening for him internally, right? But that's not the life or the world that MAFS creates for these individuals who sign up for this process. They still have to continue to have these conversations, and they produce these conversations, and unfortunately it brings up to me more, right? There's more emotional turmoil for them, right, as they're going through this. But Lauren and Orion, they're meeting with their family and friends. So Orion's meeting with his friend, and Lauren is meeting with her brother and his wife. And they're giving an update, right? And so Orion said that he feels a little strange now because he's divorced, right? And he felt like it was unfair to go through the marriage having one foot in and one foot out because he had lost romantic feelings. And he even later in the conversation too said that he still has genuine feelings and developed genuine feelings for Lauren. And I'll say this, I don't know to what degree Orion lost romantic feelings, right? And at the same time, I do know that there was an internal struggle. That's what he's speaking to, right? One foot in and one foot out. Part of him felt like he needed to leave. A part of him was saying to work on the relationship. I would really encourage Orion to really get curious around that, of what the fear was around staying in the relationship. We can all, come to a place of like, oh, he was afraid of this or he was afraid of that. We don't really know. And two, it is very common for people to, especially when they're dealing with very hard topics or things of hurt, really hurt, that they're going to lose some of those feelings. And then they have to take time to develop them, and they'll grow back, right? Once it's been resolved. You're not completely right in love and walking on cloud nine, right? The entire time. That is not the real life of marriage. And at the same time, you still do the work through that, and you still choose to love the person through that. That is the work of marriage. That is the really the journey of marriage. And it sounds like Orion just wasn't in that place to do that work. And Lauren, even on the after party, right, she said that she was just really confused because Orion said that he had really genuine feelings that he developed for her, and at the same time chose to end the marriage. And I feel like sometimes we think like, oh, because when I develop genuine, feelings in a relationship, then I make it work. And then there's a part of us that wants someone else to show up in the same way that we would, right? And give us the grace that we would give the other person. And that's just not where Orion is. That's just not where he is in his journey. He talked about how his family is disappointed that he didn't get what he was hoping for right out of this process. And I'm also hoping that maybe too, especially after watching this, that they can also to hold him accountable in some areas and help him to get a little curious about why he's showing up the way he is too. Laura stated that she's getting a divorce, right, which wasn't her choice, but she's doing this because that is what Orion decided. And she is really heartbroken, right? Really heartbroken. She said she went through a range of emotions, but she did say that her go-to Way of coping is humor, which we've seen throughout these last few episodes as she's been going through all of this, right? Her go-to is humor, and she uses that, right, to mask, and at the same time she realizes that, hey, I need to feel these feelings, and she felt them and they were uncomfortable. And I really applaud her in doing that. Oftentimes when things are uncomfortable, when feelings are painful, what is instinctive and even our mind and our body does for us is it protects us from it. It will give us a room. It'll numb those feelings out. We'll just stay in the humor and sarcastic kind of space and not really sit with the uncomfortable, like, feelings of hurt and betrayal and the other feelings, right, that Lauren was needing to really sit with and allow herself to feel. So I really applaud her in taking that time to do that, to really take care of herself and sit with the parts of her that were feeling these uncomfortable feelings, because they're valid. They're extremely valid. Lauren did talk about, too, having this part of her that's like optimistic and trying to focus on how to make it work. And the fact that Orion, he had a part of him that was like, this isn't going to work because it was focused on the things and all the things and why it wasn't working. That oftentimes happens. That oftentimes happens in a marriage, and not necessarily in the realm of like pessimistic and optimism, right, being the two polarizing views, but in anything, right, whether it's like we want to when it's like, if it's raising children, right, we want to raise the children with love and affection, and the children need structure and discipline, right? So these are two polarizing ways, and oftentimes it shows up in relationships, and learning that there needs to be both, right? So with Lauren, she has this optimistic view in the relationship of saying, hey, we need to make it work. Absolutely. And Orion's focused on all the things that aren't working. Well, those things also need to be addressed too, right? And so it's a way to do both. It's a way to say things can work, and we do need to really address the things that aren't working, right? So whether it is his inability to really communicate in an honest and effective way when in conflict, and also saying what he means and meaning what he says, right? And for Lauren, it is, right, how to speak for her anger instead of from her anger. So, right, that there can be a space where both of them feel safe, right? Lauren feels safe because he is communicating in a way that is truly what feels true and real to him, and he's being consistent in it. And then Orion feels safe because she is speaking for her anger instead of from that aggressive or heightened space, but also communicating like, hey, the fact that you do this and do this is not okay. It really hurts me. It really upsets me when you do X, Y, and Z, right? And doing both. Oftentimes we feel like we have to do one or the other, and we can do both. Lauren's brother stated that, marriage is a two-way street, and both parties need to be involved in making it work and doing the effort. And his wife stated, yeah, because if that doesn't happen, then it's just not going to work. And she really boosted her, and she said, because you're amazing, you're great, and and so it was great that she had a space that was going to pump her up. I also, too, I feel like this normally happens, just like, I won't say normally, but it usually happens, right? When you're with your friends and you're telling them what the other person did, they normally tell you, well, it was all them and you're great, right? And not to say that you're not great. And at the same time, there are some things that maybe you can look to reflect to say, hey, what role did you play in this? Not saying that it's Lauren's fault, but when conflict happens, usually both parties have played some role in it, right? But I'm glad that Lauren did have this support from her brother and his wife. And even Lauren spoke to this. It was great to just have that affirmation of her experience of Orion, because it really helped her to really get that validation she needed, right? About this whole experience. So next week we see some really emotional footage of Lauren. I'm really hoping that they do not continue to drag this on for her in the area of just like activating this like very, very fresh and tender wound, and keep like rehashing, because Maps has a tendency to just rehash the hurt and the conversation over and over and over again for the next, so on weeks. It's only, I think it's been maybe like, 2 weeks? And so I just keep rehashing. I'm just like, please, can we spare that from happening? Because it's just, just think about if you have an open wound and just someone continues to just punch it every time, like just punch it every time they see you. It prolongs the healing process, and it's painful. I just hope that they are responsible about how they navigate the situation, and don't drag this on. Next, we have Becca and Austin, and it's Becca's birthday, and so they're waking up and they're making plans to celebrate Becca's birthday. They did meet her friends at this kind of restaurant for her birthday, right? And they're having some questions of like, hey, how's it going? And Becca says it's going great. Austin doesn't answer, and at the same time, it is her friends, right? So he's letting her take the lead because it's really, right? He's like, you're wanting to hear it from her, right? But I am always curious about when that happens, when he's silent, like what does that mean, right? But she said things are going well. He didn't show any like responses that things weren't going well. And they talked about the religion, spiritual, right, space where they're in. They're trying to navigate like these differences that they have. Austin said that Pastor Cal really opened his eyes up as to what can happen, like the possibilities that they can work through the differences in their religion. Becca's friend asked about their physical intimacy, and Austin said that he's the one who likes to take it slow in this department. And Becca says she's taking his lead and allowing Austin, right, to communicate when he's ready, right? And so after that moment happens, he leaves. I guess I don't know if it's really like he's trying to get up to get something to eat or he feels uncomfortable after that. I mean, it is a prying conversation. But friends, after a while, they feel like they can ask you anything sometimes, depending on how long you've known them. But they ask like, hey, are you falling in love? And she's like, not really. And she said, why are you using the L word? She's like, no, not really. We're just really in a good space and allowing things, right, to happen. She said, okay, well, now that he's not at the table, how do you really feel about the fact that you aren't physically intimate with each other? And Becca said this is the first time. Like, this is the first time in her adult relationship, like, that a man has been slow to do this. And part of her was like, ooh, what if he isn't attracted to me? And she said that that's not the case, right? That's that they do feel attraction towards each other, and that she's just taking it slow and allowing him to go at his own pace. And so this is the housewarming episode, right? So Becca and Austin are planning for their housewarming and picking out things for the charcuterie board. And so on the day of, Austin's friend brings them a plant, which I thought was very sweet. And Becca's friends, they come in and they chat, right? So they are having moments. And Austin said, would you like to see me grill hot dogs? Austin is such he has a part of him that's like so goofy, as to say, like, I know that this is not going to be entertaining, and at the same time I need to grill the hot dogs, so can we do both at the same time? So it's his way of just kind of making light of the situation. So her friends go out and talk with him, and she spent some time talking with his friend, and the issue of religion comes up again. It feels like we're kind of in this space where, again, MAPS is doing what it normally does, which is make sure we talk about the hot topics, because right now, religion and physical intimacy are the hot topics in your relationship. And so we need to talk about it. And, every time. So that's where we are. And first, Austin's friend really he's like, hey, Austin is a tough nut to crack. And so how's that going? And she said, really, he's been very open. If there's an issue where he doesn't feel ready to talk about something, that he says, hey, give me some time. And then he actually comes back to revisit it. And so she's like very, very shocked of how open he is. A part of me, because we don't really see that on camera, is like, I wonder if this is like comparative, because she does state how her experience with men is that they're not open or communicative at all. And so I'm wondering if she's saying like this is open compared to what she's experienced, or if we're just not seeing, right? If he's more open off camera and we're just not seeing like that aspect of Austin, which, hey, I don't know if I were being filmed, if I would be completely like open about everything, especially in something as intimate as, right, a romantic relationship. So I understand, right? But there's a part of me that wonders, like, is this like a comparative thing where like, oh, he tells me something, so yeah, he's very open, right? Because this is completely different from what I've had. And so Austin's friend's like, great, I'm really excited to hear that. And he said, I'm really just like impressed of how well you guys are doing. He said, the things that I hear how you talk about your relationship is how I talked about my wife when we first started. So I'm like really happy for you all. And so then Becca brings up the area of religion and how she's, just a little concerned, and how Austin is still kind of working through some things. Austin's friend says that he identifies as an atheist, and it really hasn't been an issue in their relationship. It doesn't feel like it's something that Austin uses to make decisions in his life. And at the same time, right, a friendship relationship is much different than husband and wife. You're not planning your finances with your friends. You're not planning raising children with your friends. There's so many different aspects of your religion that you're bringing into your daily life. With you're building a family, which is much different than your friends. And also, too, it does speak to, I feel, where Austin is in his spirituality, that he can have friends that have different beliefs than him, right? Because sometimes people do tend to do like kind of like just connecting with people who have the same beliefs as them, and so they only have like that view of the world. And so the fact that he has really close friends that have like really opposing beliefs to him, but he's still able to like see them as people who have quality and value in his life, and not push them down or any of that, or judge them. That really speaks to Austin's character as well, right? And his potential to maybe work through that in this relationship. Becca also stated after the fact that, well, maybe Austin is in a different space, in his life. Maybe he's more in tune with his spirituality than he was right before, when he was meeting his friend and connecting with him then. When Austin's meeting with her friends, he said, okay, is there anything that I need to know? Like, tell me about these exes. He said, or better yet, tell me how not to be an ex. Like, what do I need to do to not be an ex? And I feel like that question lets us know that there's some interest there, right? There's some interest he has in wanting to be with her, right? I'm going to, I know I say I don't make assumptions, but I'm going to assume that he is in this moment being honest about that, like wanting to be in a relationship with Becca. And so he's like, hey, how do I make sure I'm working to make it happen? Because he's saying that, hey, this is something that I really want to do. I really want to really jump in and be in a committed relationship. And so they said really just being open and communicative, that when conflict arises, that was a place in her past relationships where that really caused a lot of turmoil for Becca. And so we're seeing, right, communication, physical intimacy, and spirituality are going to be the hot topics, it seems, for this couple. And see how they navigate that. See how they navigate it. It seems as though they are trying to and still maintaining a connection, right? Whether it is their connection that they have in their playful nature, which is important in a relationship. I don't want to down that. That's important. And also the fact that they're talking through things, right? So how do you feel that went? And they said, yeah, my friends, like your friends, that's great. She's in the past, that guy she dated, she didn't really enjoy being with their friends. So she feels like things are coming together. And so I like how even though there are some things that, right, are in the balance, especially in this like difference of spirituality, because I feel like this is a really big thing for Austin, the way that Becca names it, that they're able to still have their daily conversations and still lean in to get to know each other, even though like there's like this kind of like, I don't know, just like uncertainty that's there. Sometimes that can be the focus, and then that tends to bring them further away from each other. And so I'm glad that they're still leaning into each other while they're still like navigating these big issues. Next, we have Cameron and Claire. And so now Claire is surprising Cameron and bringing him something to eat at work. She said that he wasn't that hungry, so she ate half of the sandwich. Part of me was like, you could just let him have the whole sandwich. But that's my stuff. She surprises him with a sandwich, and Cameron is appreciative. It really seems that way. Claire has this part of her that really is intrigued about like how Cameron is excited about these bikes, right? She keeps saying like, so are you bored with this job? Like, they had this conversation on the honeymoon. I don't know if she remembers, or this, like, something about this job activates this part of her, right? Because it every time his job comes up, she's like, so this is something you're really passionate about, right? And he said, yeah. He's like, I love this. Like, every bike is different, every repair is different, and he talked about how he's like got these certifications and he's got degrees in this, and he's like one of the few people who are able to, right, do this type of work. And so it's really intriguing. It's really intriguing. And also Claire does some work, right, with Cameron while he's there, which I felt was like a really nice moment, again, for them to do some, what we call like parallel activity, right? I really feel like that's what this couple needs. When they do things together, as while they're talking, things go better. If they're just sitting and talking, ooh, that's when things start to get tense and dicey, right? Because Claire has this part of her that has these questions, and these like very like pointed questions. Cameron has this like little boy inside of him that's like, did I say the wrong thing? Or will oftentimes it's like, oh, I got in trouble. Oh, okay, well, let me joke about it. I'm feeling shame now, and let me joke about that, which we'll talk about later on, right? And in this review, but their communication is often like tense. Like, I'm not in the room with them, and I feel the intensity in their like going back and forth, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? So there's a lot that's there, right? Which we'll unpack, right? But Claire's saying that, this is a very attractive trait for her to see someone do something that they love, right? Seeing him in his element. I feel like that is really how they maybe need to get to know each other. Because the questioning thing, if it's something about that, I don't know if it's because maybe Cameron is intimidated because she's a therapist, because she's so skilled in the area of communication. I feel like she has maybe more experience using her words. I don't know if she's more experienced in communication, but she definitely has more experience using her words than maybe Cameron does, who doesn't have that skill set, right? And I feel like that he feels like there's an inadequacy maybe in that area, and that's what's leading to this. That's just me processing this out loud. But that's why I feel like potentially maybe happening, and why they're it's so intense, and it's almost like she even feeds on that a little bit, like this part of her that's like, yeah, I'm more savvy with my words, and like, and I'm saying this like unconsciously, right? Like, she's not aware that this airs here, and it's feeling like some wind into her wings in the area of communication, and so then uses that as a way, right, to feel almost safer, right? Safer to communicate in this manner, and not really give Cameron like space, right, to process, to think. It seems, yeah, right. And so, which explains a lot to why we saw a lot we did this episode. But Cameron and Claire, they're planning for their housewarming, and Claire is struggling with decorating, and those balloons are giving her a hard time. And they're having an anything but cup party. I guess that's their thing, where they can drink out of anything that's not a cup. And so it is Cameron's job to get the food. And so Claire's decorating, and Cameron comes in the house, and she's like, "You got the food?" And he's like, "No." She's like, "I don't understand. Why didn't you get the food? That was your job, to get the food." And so there's this part of her that is definitely anxious about being unprepared, right? And so this one that wants her to be prepared, and even it's like putting pressure on him to be prepared. It's almost like every situation, I'm getting the sense that every situation that things don't go the way that she wants them to go, it's like a test for Cameron. Like, "Oh, I'm prepared, you're not prepared." Like, and then there's like meaning she attaches to that. "Oh, so this is what you do. You show up like this," right? And it just really seems that Cameron is just a more laid back type of person, which we've really kind of come to this understanding about and know about Cameron, that he is pretty laid back, and to a fault at times, right? When she said, I'll just see what the limit is. I'll see." No. Some things do need to be addressed. And at the same time, we do need to give some things some breath and some room, and some processing time. And every time in the moment, you don't always have the clarity you need to do that. And so, again, this tense kind of communication happens, and she's like, "Oh, you're not prepared. You're not prepared." This part of her, right? It's like, "You're not prepared." And he said, "Well, we're in downtown Denver, and because I have recently been to Denver, I was in Denver for the Internal Family Systems Conference. Like, downtown Denver is just full of restaurants and food. Like, it's just, you can't walk 2 doors without running into another restaurant." And so having that knowledge, I was like, yeah, you could just literally order the food, and then bring it up. Now, what they could do, right, is order ahead of time and then have it timed out. But because I feel like there was so much stress about him not planning ahead, and then also his friends couldn't make it, I feel like that also was a thing that was there, right? And some energy around that. Claire did also give clarity that at the after party, that one of her friends was actually starting to date one of his friends. And so she was like, "Well, I'm not going to come if he's not going to come." And so that was kind of what that exchange was about as well. And also the fact that, I imagine there's a part of Claire that's like, "My family was at the wedding, but your family wasn't at the wedding. So now my friends are going to be at the housewarming, and your friends are going to be at the housewarming. How can I get to know you?" Right? So I feel like that's also playing a little bit in the background as well into this too. And Cameron, in his usual way, jokes it off. He's like, "Well, hey, your friends are more interesting than mine anyway, so we'll be fine." And so Cameron's trying to fix it, right? He's in a fix it mode of like, how can I help to calm Claire, because he said he feels like she's really stressed. And at the same time, he too does have the intuition to say, it feels like this is not about food. It feels like maybe she's concerned or nervous about me meeting her friends. And I feel like yes and more. Like, there's a yes and there's more. I feel like there's a lot of things that Claire is attaching meaning to, which we all do. Like, oh, if someone's not doing this, then that means that, right? So that's what I mean, attaching meaning to, right? Oh, if he does this, then this means this is what he's always going to do, which we don't know. And so that's also, I feel like, playing a role in this. Like, oh, every time we have a party, is this what's going to happen, right? Like, I feel like that's kind of some of the energy in this conflict between them two. And so Cameron's trying to fix it. He has this part of him that's like, okay, let me just help Claire calm down. And then he orders the food. In the time, he said that the app or website didn't have a schedule time that you can pick up the food. And in that moment, I felt like, oh, can you call the restaurant and have them cancel the order or change the time? In that moment, like, it seemed like they were so entrenched in that conflict and energy that they didn't have like the rational, right, or critical thinking skills really to say this can still be fixed, right? This could still be fixed. We can call the restaurant and then like just say, hey, I just placed the order there. Hopefully you didn't start on it, and I want to see if, right, you can have it ready at this time. Like that's still a possibility. But they were in this space of just like, you weren't prepared. Okay, let me prepare. It was like this very tense moment that really, I won't say wasn't needed, but maybe just needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I wonder if they had a conversation to like take a beat of like, hey, Claire, even Cameron saying, hey, I noticed that you're really concerned about this food, and it makes sense because we do need to have a plan for the food. The party is here. And I also want to know if there's any other things that you're stressed about. But it feels like, again, that's the area where Cameron gets so like, he gets so, it's almost like he's in a freeze state. Like that's the place he goes to when Claire is in this moment of stress and heightened stress, that he doesn't have the words, right, to name what he's feeling and processing that and knowing like, hey, maybe we need to just, hey, put the balloons down for just a moment. Let's sit, right, and let's talk through this. That feels like that's not something Cameron has on the ready, and that the freeze is ever so present for him. So they come back, and on the next time we see them, Cameron's sitting on the couch, and Claire's asking like, hey, did you warm up the food? And he's like, yeah, the food, yeah, it's warm. And she's asking him multiple times, and then she's like, well, let me just check. And so then she checks, and the food's not warmed up to her liking, and so she puts it on. He said, well, I did warm it up, and I just turned the oven off 20 minutes ago. He's like, the food is like very old. I don't want it to get dry. So they're here, right? And it's just this dynamic is still playing out, right, between them two. And Claire did say, hey, it's my fault. She said, it's my fault, this whole situation. I was worried about being prepared, right? She had this part of her that was worried about being prepared. I want her to even, maybe she has some time to sit down and get curious about this part of her. Like, if she's not prepared, what does she fear will happen? Worst case scenario, they can order some pizza and it arrives, 20 minutes after her guests come, right? Like, so what is she worried about? What is she concerned about if she's not prepared? What would happen to her, right? Because it could be like this time. Again, this is me writing my story. I have no facts, right? But this is how it works, though, right? We have this part of us that's concerned about being prepared. And it's because it was this one time, right, where she wasn't prepared in a social situation. She was bullied, right? Or there was a one time she wasn't prepared in class and her teacher berated her in front of the whole class. So now anytime in a social setting, I have to be prepared, right? So that's what informs us. That's what informs our internal world to make sure and look out for us. And it shows up in a way, though, that over responds. And that's really where Claire was. She was over responding and then leading Cameron to over respond. Okay, I'll just order food right now, right? And to calm her down instead of saying, hey, let's pause, right? And so when you feel yourself in that space where you're over responding, or you feel like you're like in this heightened state, take a pause. Pauses are so helpful, just to be like, let me see what's happening for me right now. Okay. Is this something that warrants this response? It's very important, right? And at the same time, does it warrant this response? So in short, I'm glad that Claire was able to take ownership and say, hey, this was my fault. We ordered the food way too early. And Claire said that she hopes that her friends like Cameron, because that would help to ease her anxiety as well, right? So she's naming that too, right? So what Cameron was feeling, there was some of that happening, right? That she's wanting them to really like him too as well. And she also stated too that if they like him, that she'll be more open. And so I'm curious about that. I want to know more about that, right? If she's saying if her friends like him, then she'll be more open in this relationship. I want to know more. Is there something she doesn't trust within herself and she's leaning on them to get validation or confirmation about? Like what is that? I want to know more. right? But her friends are all therapists, which is interesting to me. But her friends are all therapists, and Cameron's concerned about that, which makes sense. I mean, being in a room with 4 therapists is a lot. It's a lot, especially for Cameron. He already has this part of him that feels like I don't do well in the area of communication or like talking. And so now I'm going to be talking and being analyzed by 4 people, right, at one time. That's a lot. That's a lot. So a part of me really felt bad for Cameron. There's a part of me that wonders like what that's about too. Like the fact that Claire has friends that are all therapists. I'm wondering if Claire can communicate and be close to people that aren't even in her like same emotional intelligence space, right? Even Lauren, because Lauren is a person that she's really close to in the cast. Lauren has a pretty high emotional intelligence. And the fact that she's able to be very astute about her awareness, her coping skills, and taking the time to pause, right, and be like that's a lot of work, right? And knowing what's here, being able to own up for herself, give herself accountability, and give her like that's a lot of emotional intelligence, and so it makes sense why they're so close. And it feels like those are the only people that Claire gets close to. Like she's not able to have space for people who aren't in that same space as her. So that I don't know that to be true. And at the same time, the fact that all of her friends are therapists give me just like, I wonder, right? If what it would be like for Claire to connect with somebody who didn't have all the knowledge that she has. Putting that in quotations because book knowledge is great, and even application of book knowledge is great, but at the same time, connection, you don't really need all of that to connect to somebody. I wonder if Claire is able to connect with people outside of the therapeutic world, like what that looks like, right? So her friend comes in, and they are talking about this process, and how Cameron, and I feel like this too, like Claire named this in front of her friend, which I guess there's a part of me that when it comes to naming things in front of people, depending on the tenderness of the information, just to be cautious about it, right? She said, well, Cameron's concerned because, he's going to be in a room full of therapists. I'm like, okay, maybe let Cameron say that, but she did. And he said, I'm okay. And so then her friend jokes and says, well, tell me about your relationship with your father, as a joke. And so, jokes can be really great, and jokes can also open up some things, right? We saw that with Lauren and Orion. We see this in this situation where Cameron's like, oh, distant, right? And her friend said, well, do they know that you went through this process? And he said, no. And so then Claire is like, what just happened? It's like they don't. And then Cameron goes, to defend his decision, right? Of like, what would you like to tell a man on his deathbed, right? And so then there's like, open up this very tender space in Cameron's world of the strained relationship with Dad. And he's also dying, right? And this is where Cameron is, and he's holding this. He's been holding this the whole time that Claire's been with him and not spoken to it. I feel like that's a big thing to hold and go through getting married at first sight at the same time. And I'm wondering too, if like, oh, is this something that Cameron's using to take his mind off of it? Like I'm just like, and I'm saying this unconsciously, not that he's like, oh, my dad's dying and I'm uncomfortable with this, let me sign up for Married at First Sight. Like that's not oftentimes how we show up in the world. We're doing things and not understanding why we're doing them. We're just doing them like, hey, because for him, she said, what made you sign up for this? He was like, well, I didn't see a reason not to, and everything in my life is in order otherwise. So I said, hey, let's do it. Right. So I'm just wondering, right? That's a lot to be holding. Whether he recognizes it or not, it seems like he doesn't. And something for him to get curious about how he navigates these really big things. And we see that he just kind of like put it out there. And Claire's a bit taken back by all of this, the fact that he would say this and name this in front of her friend and has never shared it with her. And so Claire asked him, like, what would he say if he knew? Like, if he did know, what would he say? And Cameron's like, I have no idea. I have no idea. And so then Claire's like, okay, let's not continue talking about it. We'll talk about it later. It's not something, right? Like, it's not housewarming party topics, right? So then our other friends come in, and so they ask, like, hey, how are things going? And Claire says, hey, I have experienced the complete range of emotions. And her friend says, oh, you're talking about the emotional wheel? Like, you could just point to all of them? And I don't know. It feels like, and it's not intentional, right? But all her friends and Claire know about the emotion wheel. I don't know if Cameron has the knowledge of what an emotional wheel is, right? And so there's a part of me that feels for Cameron in this moment, because he's in a situation where, again, all this shared knowledge and shared information, shared experience, and then it's just Cameron. And yes, his friends can show up, and that, so that's an aspect of it, but it's just like, it's just like a very tough way. And it seems like the way he was disarming himself is even potentially maybe putting out this information, this tender information, for like there to be more compassion for him in the room, and even too, like, using humor, right? So he's like, well, how do you deal with Claire's emotions? He said, well, I guess I do okay. I give her some space, and then I come back and I see that's messed up, and so then I apologize. And so he's like, so that's about right? And then Claire's just shaking her head, and then her therapist friend says, well, I'm hearing you say. So he's like intuitively hearing and reflective listening. He's using a therapeutic tool in a housewarming party, was saying, oh, so I'm hearing you say that Claire is always right. He's like, well, yeah. And if I engage with her, then what? Again, I just see Cameron coming from a place where he's like really having to defend himself throughout this experience, right? And protect himself throughout this experience, like with Claire, with her friends. Like, this is his view of seeing himself as less than, right? I don't know if they do, right? But his view is that he sees himself as less than. So, and he talks about how Claire's is like really very most intelligent person he's ever dated, and he's really impressed by that. And at the same time too, he doesn't feel like he is in the same space of communicating the emotion space, and he's like drowning, sinking. He said, like, she's swimming and he's sinking. And so they kind of give him some encouragement, right? And even talk to about the religion space, because he's not wanting to raise his children in religion. He feels like it's brainwashing. That's what Claire stated with her friend. They're both saying, hey, there's a way to compromise with this, and also may not be something we need to fix right now in the moment, but continue to lean in and build, right, with each other. And Claire's friend kind of gives her the same advice, right? And at the same time, caveat saying, but like, ooh, what is the compromise though? And to saying like, ooh, what is the compromise? Is that possible? Is it possible to compromise about something like that? If he's feeling like taking his children, right, to church and having them be raised in the spirituality is brainwashing them, and she sees that as being completely different, because she says, I am engaged in my faith. I feel like it'd be something to explore, and not necessarily, again, to change Cameron's mind about this, but really just to explore that incident that occurred at 10 years old where he was kicked out of the church. It feels like that was a very traumatic experience for him, and just to explore that a little bit more, and see, and two, wondering if there's some openness that Claire can have too about that, right? But it may be a deal breaker. It may be, and if it is, right? But they're both encouraging them to lean in and find a compromise. But ooh, what is that compromise? What does that look like? It's really up to them, right? And Claire's friends with Cameron state that, ooh, they see that like his feelings are valid, his feelings are real, he's really showing up in this experience, and at the same time, he has these feelings but don't know how to express them all the time, and they're wondering how Claire's going to be with that, and they don't really see, knowing their friend, that's going to be something she's going to be able to really deal with, like how she's going to be able to navigate that, like from a space of like patience and compassion and grace, like for Cameron. So not everybody has it, right? Not everybody has all these tools. And at the same time, right, if he's willing, if he's working on it, if he knows it, because he's aware of it. So I'm like, if he's aware of it, then maybe he is willing to do the work. And can Claire give him some grace in that? And so after this house party or housewarming ends, they kind of hash it out a little bit. Claire's like, I just want you to know I was a bit taken aback by what you shared. And I was just like, wow, I didn't know this information. And Cameron says that phrase again that he said when Claire was at his home. Well, she asked. And I feel like there's something there, right? But she asked. It feels like, yes, Claire did ask after they first got married, right? And he said, yeah. So when I'm thinking, and so it sounds like in her mind, she heard a yes to that answer. And I don't know if that's what he meant in the moment. I don't know if he was just like kind of using yeah as a word to like connect, like, yeah, so what I'm thinking about doing is once we get done with this process, we're going to go to New Zealand and have a wedding there, right? And so I know this really hurt Claire, because at the after party she even like teared up around it, like the fact that he was dishonest with her. And I don't know if he was intentionally being dishonest with her, or if he felt like he just wasn't ready to disclose that information the day after they got married. Who knows, right? And at the same time, it feels like there needs to be some open communication around his family dynamic. And also, there needs to be some open communication on Cameron's end, because he does name that he doesn't really feel comfortable being open and honest with her, because he feels like Claire hasn't spoken any like words of affection or admiration towards me. So I don't even know where we stand in this relationship. I don't know. And so I feel like that's huge. That's huge. And it's something he's needing to really feel safe enough to open himself up. He feels like he doesn't know how Claire feels about him. And so I feel like, again, when we say that communication, like Claire's more skilled in communication, I feel like, again, Claire has more experience using words. I feel like when it comes to emotional intimacy, I feel like I see a lot of guards that Claire uses to protect herself. She is not very vulnerable when communicating her feelings towards Cameron, right? She herself isn't open. So it's a challenge. And that is one of the reasons we're hearing that Cameron's feeling like, I'm not going to share that my dad's on his deathbed. And like that, I have this strained relationship with him because I don't even know if you like me like that. Right. And Claire's like, I don't know. I'm wondering what she needs. Because she says she needs her friends to like him in order for her to feel more open. But I feel like there's more than that. I feel like there's got to be more that Claire's not getting, because she has her guard up as well. This intellectual one that like tears down and cuts through all of the things, all the words he says. So he's always on the defense. That part is there. It's arming her. It's almost like it's looking for something. There's a part of her that's looking for Cameron to show up in a certain way. And if he does, then she'll feel more open. And so she's like, oh, if my friends see that, then okay, I'll be more in tune to it. Like there's something there that Cameron's not giving Claire, that she's looking for, or she's trying to even make him to be, because she's very corrective. She has this part of her that's very corrective of like, oh, that's not okay. Well, that's a horrible way to do that. And like is looking for him to show up in a certain way in order for him to be viewed as like a brave or safe space for her. And Cameron isn't that. Cameron's Cameron. Cameron is a laid back guy who kind of avoids a lot of things. He works a lot and he jokes pretty much through a lot of things. He he isn't the best at communicating, but also he has this tender side of him that is really wanting to lean into her and take the lead too on them getting to know each other, whether it's buying the huge bouquet of flowers or planning the paint party, right? Having her do some activities with him at his job. Like, he is taking some lead, and I don't know if Claire is taking note or seeing that. We did see like a little movement towards Cameron of taking a sandwich, to him at work. And at the same time, it feels like Cameron's needing more and Claire's needing more. And she named that, they respect each other, but she's like, is that enough? Well, I'm hearing it's not enough from her. I'm seeing that it's not enough for her. This corrective part of her, this one that, too, it's like this part of her has Cameron like under a microscope and is like looking to see if he has all the things. And nobody has all the things, especially on Married at First Sight, because you didn't pick them, right? And so seeing if who they are, who Cameron is, I wonder if she can accept Cameron, who he is at his core, and really just walk with him through this process instead of like dissecting him through this process. That's what it feels like. It's there. And with him being dissected, then Cameron feeling exposed under this microscope that Claire has, it makes him want to close in even more and withhold information. That's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm feeling is happening. I don't know if Cameron was intentionally being dishonest. I don't know what that meant when he said, so what we're going to do is get married at New Zealand. I don't know. And at the same time, it did have an impact on Claire, right? She felt like he was dishonest and did communicate this to his parents, and then she didn't. So, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to work through this. They don't. It would be nice if the experts gave them really like intensive support, the support they need, but that doesn't happen. And so then what continues to happen is defense. Protection continues to protect. And when someone's protecting themselves in a relationship, then the other person sees that protection, and then it's like, oh, there's a threat, so then I'm going to protect myself. And when this is happening in a relationship, when protection clanks against the other person's protection, more harm happens. That's just what happens. That is what happens, how hurt happens in relationships. Protection clinks and it causes more damage. And that's what it seems like it's going to continue to happen with Cameron and Claire, unless the heart of the matter really gets exposed and taken care of for them too. Because I see that they do have some good stuff in here to make it work. And I also see where they need some support. They really need some support, and not from Claire's friends. Not from Claire's friends, because that's not, even though Cameron is a part of him that saw those gentlemen as, an ally, which is great. They're still going to be in Claire's favor. They need some support that's really going to help them navigate this from a space of calm, right? A space of calm and a space of clarity, and hopefully one that has some patience and grace in there as well. But that's not where they are right now. It's like they're under the gun. It's like Claire has Cameron. This part of Claire has Cameron under investigation, and he is in the interrogation room, and he is withholding information. And so that withholding information then makes Claire more skeptical. And so it keeps going and keeps going. It's hard to, it's and it's sad to see that. It really is. It's sad to see that, because I see how these two people are really have a lot to offer. And so we shall see. Last, we have Emily and Brennan. Whew. All right, everybody, let's take a breath. All right, so Brennan stated that Pastor Cal recommended that they move in with each other as soon as possible. And so They decided to move in a day before their housewarming party. And they do that. Emily's moving into hard things. And she's got a lot of stuff. She's got a lot of stuff. She says she's got a lot of stuff. She feels like, oh, I'm really stressing Brennan out. And at the same time, she still has an injured wrist, right? That wrist is still injured. And Brennan, he looks through her bags and he's like, oh, this is too much. And it's like a part of him said, yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm not helping her. And obviously Emily feels some type of way about this, right? And she even named it, at the after party last week, right? Of having, like, I'm crying and Brennan isn't coming to check in on me. Does he care? Does he care? And it shows up. It shows up later in the episode, at the housewarming. But they're trying to figure out their morning routine. He's like, we're gonna have to do something different. She said, well, you shower at 7:15, so that's on you. He said, well, yeah, I take a pretty fast shower unless I have some processing to do. And she's like, well, you took really long showers in Mexico. He said, well, I had a lot of processing to do in Mexico, right? So now she's like, okay, so now is that something, right? This part of her that's like checking in, because Cameron is not that open, right? He's not open with his feelings. He's more of a person that internalizes and overthinks. I'm hearing, right? There's this processing part of him, right? Is just taking this information and not really letting it out, expressing it. So now there's this part of her that's like looking for signs and like, okay, well, now is everything okay? Like doing a temperature check and constantly seeing is everything okay? Is everything okay? Is everything okay? So now, do I need to be concerned about when you take longer showers? And so Emily said, like, yeah, I never put that together. I never put together that he was concerned or he had some issues because he was taking a longer shower. Now I know. And so you can sense that there's something there, right? And so then Brennan asked her, well, so tell me, how you feel like this is going to go, because you've never lived with someone. I don't know if it felt for you all that there was like some annoyance there in that question. I felt a little heat there, like a little sarcasm, a little something was there. It seemed like that to me. You tell me. But it felt like that. And she said, well, I think everything will be fine, right? So it's part of her that comes like to even like defend herself. I think things will be fine, but can you just like let me know or give me a little warning when you're taking longer showers or short showers, right? So she's using humor to joke about how the fact that Cameron doesn't communicate when there's an issue and she doesn't know. And then, man, this whole time it was an issue and I didn't know. And you were taking these long showers that, there's a part of her that's almost like, man, if I would have known that, then I would have known there was an issue. Maybe I could have done something, right? So I hear her taking on some like responsibility to make things work in this relationship, when it's also Cameron's responsibility to communicate them as well, right? And so they're choosing the theme of their housewarming party, and Brennan says, hey, what about we do wigs? And so Emily's like, I don't know. He's like, well, I like it, right? And then it seems like Emily just kind of bends. I don't know if she was just, maybe she didn't have an issue. It's a part of me that feels like she's being more amicable, like being more agreeable, more accommodating because of the space that Brennan's in this relationship. Like even as they're trying on wigs, like she's affirming him, telling him how he looks in the wigs. And I'm a little concerned about that. If this is true, right? This accommodating energy, it feels that way. Because I know that there's this spicy, right? There's this spicy part of Emily. We have seen it. It doesn't really show up that much with Brennan, right? And I have some concern about this dynamic. It seems, I don't know, it just seems not well. Like it just doesn't seem like a very healthy space, where and it seems like there's potential for more harm to happen because of that. And so they are talking about how they're glad, right? They're glad that They've moved in together. They said they agree with Pastor Cal. And she's like, yeah, at first I was okay with it, but I'm glad we did because we don't have time. We think we have time, but really don't have time. And then Brennan said, well, I'm glad that you gave me space, right? And so, again, even in that moment, it feels like there's a lot of unspokenness that's happening, right? Like, oh, now you feel like this needed to happen, but I needed that space, right? So maybe that's something he could speak for from a place that's like vulnerable and true for him, right? Of Brennan saying, yes, I do agree with you that Pastor Cal is right, that we did need to move in. Like that's if we're really going to make this work, that's what we need. And I really too appreciated that time to just kind of give myself some space to kind of think some things out, because that really helped me to get some understanding of where we were, right? Like, instead of putting it on Emily, like, well, I'm glad you gave me, right? It just felt like it's something in there. The way he communicates, there's something in there that I'm like, what is that? I want to know more. I don't want to put any of my stuff on him, but if there's something in that energy there, and it's, yeah, there's some annoyance, there's some aggression, there's something there. And again, this defensive energy, I needed that time, basically, right? And he probably did, right? And so there's no shade about that, but just the way he communicates it more from a space that's centered and not making it about Emily, right? Making it about instead of making it about him, right? Of like, hey, I really needed that time, right? It really helped me, instead of how it came off, right, in that moment. But they are working through their thing. They got altered egos that they're working through, and they got the little hands. So, they're excited. And Emily is saying the fact that Brennan is open to do this, that she's feeling like he's all in. And I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily true. But there's this really part of her that's hoping, right? Hoping that means this. It means that he's willing to have a wig and little hand party. That's what it means. And he's moved in, so he's willing to do that. And that's all that means, right? Sometimes we do try to attach more to the behavior, attach more meaning, especially if we're feeling in a place where we're trying to encourage ourselves. Like, well, if he's doing that, then maybe he's all in. Like, we don't know. Where Brennan is. We just know what he's doing. And it's up to Brennan to communicate where he is, right? But again, there's this part of her that's taking his behavior to mean something, which can be dangerous, right? Because she's making meaning of something. Maybe she feels like he's here when really he's here. And then when she finds that out, then she's like, well, I thought because you did this. And he's like, no. I did that because Pastor Cal said that's what we should do. So I'm here. Doesn't mean that he's all in, right? So Emily's hoping for a fun and relaxing evening. And Emily's friends come in first. They ask how things were with moving in, and Emily names that she had a lot of stuff to move in, and it really was hard because, her wrist is still injured. And then her friends look at Brennan like, they're upset, which any friend would be, right? I feel like in that moment, Emily was looking for some care. She was looking for some care. She didn't get it from Brennan, so she was looking for some care from them. And the shadow side of that, so the side where it's like, now this puts this tension between your friends and Brennan, right? Which blows up later on through the party, right? So now they're looking at him through the view of you don't care about our friend, right? From their view, right? Because Emily stated this, right, in front of them, now they're looking at him through a lens, right? A lens we're even hearing, as they were talking, through their past relationships, through the part of them that's concerned and wanting to protect her. So they're coming and looking at everything he does, right? So he he's under now a microscope, and they're ready to protect her. Okay. And so it's like almost like the breeding ground of that. And it just keeps going, right? And so Brennan's friends come in, and Brennan has this part of him that is a bit sarcastic, even from a place of like that's like wanting to punch down a little, and so it keeps showing, right? Like even when he was talking about like, oh, she has another hand, applause for her, and he does this little thing of like, I'm applauding her, right? I want to know more about Brennan's story. We don't know a lot, and I really want to know a lot more about Brennan's story, because it's obvious. It's obvious that he has been through and seen some things. We know that his dad drunk vodka, then he drank water. So that makes me think of a lot of times where alcohol is present and prevalent a lot. There's a tendency for a lot of things to happen. And so I'm just like, I wonder. And your parents are together and they're going to stay together. So mom's been with dad through this. We don't know if it's alcohol abuse. It could be just like a dependency upon alcohol. And is this what was that like? And what did Brennan see? What messages did he take in of like how to treat women? Like there's some things that are there, right? And at the same time, as they're having these different conversations where Brennan's talking with her friends, Emily's talking with his friends, and she said like, hey, I was feeling great until this week when stuff started to hit the fan, and like I really don't know where we are. And if Brennan is open enough to really be present in this experience, in this process with me, and his friends kind of look like, oh boy, right? But then I think that's the only thing we see. And then there's Brennan's conversation with Emily's friends, and it does not go well. It does not go well. They're pushing, right? And they're picking apart everything they saw that during the party, right? Yes, you may have took the things out, but you didn't help her put it on the platter. You didn't put it on the table, so then that automatically puts Brennan, and he already kind of has this kind of defensive nature right there. And so then it automatically, right? He's like, hey, so just because of this one incident, you feel like I don't, and I'm here. And he is here. And at the same time, Emily has to give them information about how he's been showing up in the process too. At first she said she didn't, and then Keisha and the after party kind of pulled her down. She's like, but then how did they know that he doesn't like to be viewed on camera? She's like, well, I did tell them that, right? So they have this information. And unfortunately, what they are doing in this moment is coming from a place of interrogating him, right? They say that they're doing this from a way that's supportive, and that they are doing this from a place that they are concerned. And I feel like that is true. And also, Brennan's experience of them feeling attacked is also true, right? So both of them are true. And unfortunately, they say they're trying to understand him, but they're not giving him space to really be open to that, because they're like, well, you did this, and you did this, and you didn't do this, and you give her a hard time, and you say you want to do this, but why are you here? And then he's like, well, what answer are you looking for? He said, because I already answered the question, right? I'm here because I dated and something was missing. I want somebody to build a life with, and that's why I'm here, right? And really, I feel like what they're asking of why you're here is, why are you showing up like this with my friend if this is what you wanted to do, right? And that's not being communicated though. Why are you here? It's like that voice that's frustrated with him and that's upset with him. He's defending his case. He's like, hey, I'm here though. And he is here. He's still present. And at the same time, he is present in some energy that isn't all the way there, right? Because he says to them, okay, guys, okay, I understand you're saying that I didn't help her with her things, but in real life, if she was, and it's like, whoa, this is real life. It's almost like for him, I get the sense when he said in real life, like, yes, these experts agreed for her, like picked her to be my wife. He's saying like, okay, these experts picked her to be my wife, but I didn't. And so I still, like, I'm not agreeing to this until I choose for her to be my wife, right? So she's not my wife until I say she is. And that's not the case at all. She is. And even if even if she's not your wife, she's still like a human being, right? So it's like, that's what makes me wonder how he feels about women in general. If there's some beliefs that, again, that he has around that, because it's like, she's still a human being who has an injured wrist and she's bringing in things. Yes, you're annoyed with her, but do you have like the ability to, okay, even though I'm upset with her, and even though I don't want to move in, but I am moving in, that I still am, like, there's still chivalry there, or there's still right, some I care of her just as a human being. Let me get these things for you, right? And no, Emily did not ask for help. And at the same time, I see where she is trying to just do right, to keep the calm, keep the cool, to see where he is. Does he care about me? Does he care about me? And if he's right, he hasn't really shown a lot of care for her throughout this journey, from the honeymoon on. And so now they are kind of hashing out this conversation. She shared that his friends really know him and really understand him, and she's glad that they got to talk. And he said, well, I didn't go well with your friends. They really feel attacked, and I had to defend myself in our relationship. They felt like I was just being defensive, and it was more than that. And I feel like it was. I feel like it truly was more than that. I get that sense. And at the same time, too, some of his responses, I feel like that he could have defended their relationship from a place that was potentially like just more respectful, right? Just there was a lot in there. Like we're still, again, getting to know Brennan, right? But there were some ways that he could have done that. Like, hey, I really see how you really care about Emily, and how you're seeing some things that are not okay, and they're not okay. And at the same time, there's more that you haven't had, unfortunately, to get to know me. And I'm wondering if you're open to just getting to know me versus asking me about the things that you feel like I'm not doing right. Like, do you want to get to know me? And that's a way of really defending himself, and not in a way that's like, aggressive and fighting. And it feels like that's the tool he has, right? This part of him that's showing up in this way, that's what he has. He has that tool there. And I'm wondering how that tool was developed. Like, what did he see? What did he experience? What were his experiences with women just in general? Like, there's so much, right? There's so much, but there's something there. There's something there where I'm concerned. I'm concerned about Emily in this space, just because, again, she's coming from the space of really trying to make it work, and trying to be hopeful, and trying to even just go along, right? To make sure that Brennan goes along. Like, oh, if I show up this way, then he will be all in and really stick with this. And really, it's Brennan's decision. Nothing she says or does is going to really make that decision for Brennan. He did state that he appreciated that Emily was supportive of him in this situation with her friends, and is really encouraged by that. I really would have loved for him to say that to Emily in that moment. Like, I really appreciate the fact that you're hearing me out. Like, these are your friends, and I know that they have your back, and I know that, like, even you know them longer, you're more inclined to have their back, but I also see how you're showing up for me, and I really appreciate that. And that wasn't said, at least on camera, that we saw. But I'm a little concerned too with the footage that we see in his session with Dr. Pia, like, and then the scene that they have next week. Like, I'm kind of concerned. Like, I'm hoping that this is just editing. It doesn't feel that way. I'm being just 100% honest. It doesn't feel that way, but I'm hoping that things aren't as bad as what they seem for next week's episode. But you let me know how you feel about these remaining couples, how you feel about the fact that they continue to stretch this along with Orion and Lauren. Share your thoughts. And if you are still with us, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, be cool, be calm, be centered. Peace.